far do I have to walk? So I can go here. I don't like the pace, but I do like to know my boundaries. Oh wow, you guys have done most of the stage. That's fair. So if I just stick at the podium, I'm all right. Okay, sounds good. Even though this is a small group, even though it's recorded, I'm glad this is a small group today just because this is going to be a little fun and difficult at the same time. And that's not, there we go. Okay, I'll get started. Mentoring the next generation. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Kevin Howard, also known as Lean. On Twitter, it's KL34N. Long story short, I forgot my password to the original account, waited a year, created a new one, and then found the password to the original account and didn't want to switch back because I had a couple of followers that I didn't want to move, and I was just really lazy. Some of you may have seen this picture. We'll talk about what that is in a minute. So I'm VP of Security Engineering over at Secuvant Security Services. 10 years as a SAINTCON conference organizer, DC 801 core member, which is the local DEF CON chapter. 801 Labs co-founder. 801 Labs is a hackerspace in Salt Lake City. Utah Same Board of Trustees, maker, hacker, and CEO of Cheap Sheep Enterprises. So if you haven't visited the vault downstairs, Cheap Sheep Enterprises, that's the new vault this year. It's going to be a lot of fun if you haven't seen it. The reason why I listed this, and as many as I could, but the list could go longer, is because I wanted to explain essentially how did I get here, and what influences in my life allowed me to have these positions, have this, these organizations that I'm associated with. And to start, this talk is about mentorship. We all came from somewhere. I had mentors. Many of you probably had mentors. This is a very small subset of my mentor list. My mentors, I was 19 years old, going to the college in a computer, I think it was data communications class, and the CIO happened to be my instructor, and his name was Eric Mance. And I asked him one day after class, hey, I'm interested in security. How do I get involved in security? And at the time he said, there's not really a lot of universities out there that have cybersecurity programs, so we just have to kind of get you involved and see what we can do. And so he says, well, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? I said, well, I like hacking because I'm 19 and I like to hack. That sounds fun. Well, what can you do? Well, I can break a web key. And so he said, prove it. And so I proved it, and he said, okay, so let's get you an internship. Let's get you in, and let's show you the ropes. Why does it matter? Why is hacking a big deal? Why do you need to secure it? And let's see how we can keep you out of trouble. So I started as an intern there at the college. Back then it was College of Eastern Utah. Today it's USU East. And Bob Potts was the IT admin there. I shared an office with Bob, and he kind of showed me the ropes. He taught me a lot about networking. He taught me a lot about the servers. And I said thanks, and quickly grew into a position of, okay, how do I kind of take this on and build it myself, run it myself, expand on this. I spent 6 years at the college. And in that time, we had moved our physical boxes to VMware because that was the greatest thing. We swapped out our network infrastructure. We replaced the phone system to a VoIP system, expanded a new wireless system. And so I had an opportunity because of Eric and Bob to learn all of these different technologies. Some of you may know them. Actually, I think both of them are here this year. And that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, these two were kind of the foundation of what I am today. Fast forward about 5-6 years. Well, no, actually two years. I attended my first SAINTCON. This was in Richfield, Snow South, I think. 50 people, I think, is what it was then. Really excited. Got my feet wet into the security space. One of the challenges, the hacker challenges, before that was ever a thing, was cracking web. And I said, oh, I know how to do this. And bumped into Troy that year. and said, Troy, I'm kind of interested in this. Yeah, I want to help out. I want to help out the conference. What can I do? It wasn't really a conference, and it was more of a, hey, we're going to go down and meet for a couple days. And he says, okay, sounds good. Grab that cable. Let's go. And I instantly started volunteering. Very next year, we moved over to, I think it was St. George. Back then, it was at Dixie State College, and we grew that into 125 people, and then we moved up to Weber, grew that into 600 people. We've moved here. We've been here 4 years, and this year it's 1,100. And so, being so close to Troy back then played a huge role in getting me exposed to the technologies and the security industry. And so an opportunity came up where, a couple years later at the college, I had kind of touched everything, learned a lot, was having a good time, and Troy said, hey, how about I actually teach you real networking? And teach real networking in the sense of routing protocols. And I said, I know networking. I can run VLANs, I can run switches. He says, no. You don't know how little you know. Come work for me. So I did. I worked at the UEN Network Operations Center for about a year and a half, and it blew me away. I had no idea how little I knew, and I had a lot of access at the college, and I had learned a lot of things at the college, but still had no idea what I didn't know. And so Troy kind of took me up to that next step. Fast forward a little bit, got involved in the DEF CON community, and when I came back home, DC 801 had kind of spun back up, and it was SOBIT, and that kind of really kicked it back into gear that following year of DEF CON. I want to say it was 16, 17 or 18. So I got involved in DC 801 to help kickstart that, and we grew that organization. Then Grifter, if many of you should know Grifter, gave me an opportunity to work on the network team at Black Hat, and that was a whole nother level of exposure. Steve Fink, I've worked with him at Black Hat, I've worked with him at Secuvant and many other places. He kind of took my Linux knowledge to the next level. Nemus, worked with him for a little while, worked for him. He kept pushing me to be better in security every day, asking the hard questions, and I started learning you can't just BS people. You have to actually know what you're talking about. And so you really have to dig deep and say, I don't know. Nemus was the first guy to really push me to say, I don't know, and that was really uncomfortable. And many of you should know Dark Matter. If you haven't seen the Wi-Fi cactus on his back or around town, it's Dark Matter. I've known him for years, and he has been a huge player in keeping me curious, keeping me focused on always continuing to expand my knowledge. It's a non-stop learning process. And so Dark Matter, I watched that Wi-Fi cactus become the cactus over the years, where it started at DEF CON as just, hey, I want to throw this monitoring box in the corner and see what I get. And so that was a lot of fun to watch that develop, and he encouraged me to go do some of the same things in the projects I was working on. So all of these people play instrumental roles in what I would say my experience and my security expertise is today. But above all, there was one other individual who played an even bigger role, and that was Devin Four. Devin Four, if many of you don't know, or many of you might know, founder of the Transistor. Transistor was here locally in Provo Norham. He is the co-founder of 801 Labs, so before 801 Labs started, we were all kind of hanging out at the Transistor. We had started the DC 801 group, and one day he said, hey, we need a Salt Lake Makerspace. Why don't you guys just go do that, and I'll help get it off the ground, because he had been running the Transistor for years. And so he helped us kind of build 801 Labs out of the gate. He showed us the ropes on how to get the organization kind of started. So he's a core member of DC 801, conference organizer, Open West, B-Sides, SLC. He's been involved in many conferences, Black Hat as well. But ultimately, he's a hacker, maker, and mentor. So his slogan was, keep your leads tinned all the time. And so there's a little video of the Transistor real quick.
Transistor kind of came about. Basically, it's a small power controlling a larger power. We thought it sounded kind of cool and nerdy and electronic-y, so we went with that. We kind of first opened January 2010. Everything just migrated down into the Utah County area, and then we've just been growing for a couple years, and running on the we don't care what happens to this group kind of attitude, and it's grown fairly quickly, and we're up to about 25 members between this location, and we actually have an extension in Midvale. We do monthly classes and kind of public nights. They're pretty fun. So if people are curious about what the space is, they should come down and check it out. We've done amplifiers. We've done some composites classes with carbon fiber and different things like that.
So the Transistor Makerspace is pretty much the ideal scenario for having a group of mentors together. And what was interesting about that place was everyone knew something special in their own world, whether it was soldering, electronics. We had a guy that did weird things with NASA. And so every time I go down there, it was always like, hey, this is a really cool space. I'm always learning. And I didn't know half the stuff in there. 3D printing was in there. And it was a place for people to get together and mentor each other more than anything. So not a traditional mentorship architecture, but we'll talk about that. But one thing that happened when I was always hanging out with Decaf, it was, I'd ask him, hey, how the hell did you become so smart? His response was, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I just play with things until I figure them out. And that is, to the core, to this day, what all of us are kind of telling ourselves, right? We don't know half of what we know. We just play with it, we figure it out. But it always, we kind of go down these paths because someone said, hey, why don't we check that out? Hey, why don't we look at this? And it's someone that is mentoring us, whether it's an official mentor or not, that kind of sparks that interest. And one of the things that he sparked in our fun little makerspace world was an arcade cabinet. So we didn't know how to build an arcade cabinet. That's what you go to the Nickelcade for, right? But he and Tim is also in this picture, designed an arcade cabinet that we could all kind of build together. And so he said, hey, it's going to be a few $100s. We'll design it. We've got a guy that can mill this. Let's just figure it out. And let's figure out what it'll do, which then turned into this. So this is the first arcade I've ever built. I didn't know what I was doing, but I didn't care. I was just going to try and figure it out. And what happened was we started with the frame. We put it together. We got the joysticks together. We configured the joysticks. And I said, it's missing something. Let's throw a marquee on it, right? So we laser etched some acrylic and put some LED lights around it. And the LED lights were actually a recommendation of Troy. So what looks like a simple MAME cabinet is the product of 4 or 5 people coming up with ideas, throwing it together, and seeing it just stick together. One of the other things he did was, during the first year of our DC 801 party at DEF CON, we had badges to sell for party funds, and he built this little badge for all of us to play Tetris and a couple of other games on. I am not an electronics guy. I don't know badges, but I was able to put a little sheep picture on the badge, right? So it kind of got me interested in electronics and Arduino and some other things, right? Just a little bit of exposure to this allowed me to take off and start expanding that. And then Devin's influence is also, when we talk about 801 Labs, this was the original 801 Labs hackerspace. And so this is also one of the first of many iterations of things that we do in the community. That you've probably seen the new Makerspace, if you haven't, it's downtown Salt Lake. Very different than this. And there's new talent, new blood that's come in and said, hey, I want to take this and I want to expand it. I want to build on this Makerspace. This was just a couple of tables and a projector. You know, now we've got vinyl cutters, we've got laser cutters, we have a mini CNC mill, we have solder stations. So everything is building upon each other. And that's what I believe the mentorship community really needs to continue to strive for. At one point, we got recognized in Hacker Valley, or City Weekly, with the title Hacker Valley. And I find it funny that in the bottom left, you'll see one of the captions, a gang of Utah tech geeks might be your computers and the country's last line of defense, right? A little overplayed, but it was fun to see people in the community starting to kind of take note in what's going on. And so ultimately, what does mentoring really mean? In short, it's just advise and train, right, in its simplest form. So a couple years at SAINTCON, we had a group of high school kids come out. Mr. T, this is 2013, I think. think this was the first year. I think this was the first year that you guys came out. And so you'll see here a picture of a group of high school kids. Now, one of the challenges that we had at SAINTCON was it had grown fast. It had kind of mushroomed. And we said, well, do we really want to allow high school kids into the organization? A lot of people said, no, this is a professional conference. I don't want kids here. It'll be distracting. It'll be, what can they contribute? What can they get out of this conference? And so the concerns, couldn't have been more wrong. Couldn't have been farther from the truth. Can kids really contribute to the community and give back? What we found out was actually yes, in a very, very big way. Almost in so much so that we all kind of felt embarrassed that these kids were learning faster than us and at a pace that we couldn't keep up with. And so let's play a quick game called Spot the Mentors. You see a bunch of people in here. The mentors, and I'll highlight them here. I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see those. On the far left, Fuzzy Nop, a red teamer, very, very respected in the industry. Then you have Josh Galvez, Zevlag, the Hacker Challenge Game Master. So that year he was teaching the kids about the Hackers Challenge and getting them involved. And then you've got Seth, kind of stuck behind two kids. He was teaching them about privacy and social engineering. Me, Troy, Dark Matter behind that. We were getting just as involved and teaching lock picks and everything else. You've got Dan Daggett, who was kind of a core instrumental person to contribute to the high school kids in a way that we don't normally see. I think it was Social Geeks was more of a after-school club, getting people involved, which turned into a Hackerspace pretty soon after that. And then Mr. T on the far right, who is here today still, in a very different capacity, actually, which is awesome. But without Mr. T, these high school kids would never have had an opportunity to come down here, right? So these are the first set of mentors for the kids in this environment. So 1 year later, fast forward, we've got the same group, but larger, who have come back, and you see now the Social Geeks banner says capture the flag. In the year that they were gone, they went and built a CTF and a Hackerspace. They came back, and they even presented on their accomplishments over the past year. And they said, hey, you guys motivated us to build a Hackerspace, to build a CTF, and so they were able to talk about it. And then this happened. There was a contest, a Hackers Challenge contest to get the kids involved. It was committee members have a badge. Go steal the RFID tag off that badge and submit it as a Hacker Challenge flag. I have never met a group of people that are better social engineers than kids. It was the funniest thing to see the excuses of why they needed my badge. So Lean's badge was born, and it now has a Twitter profile. So this was iteration 1. It was a basic badge. The next year, this is iteration number 2. The previous year, I went to Hack in the Box, its first year. I got really tired. I fell asleep. Someone took a picture and printed it out on a badge and named it The Real Lean and used it for the vault. The vault actually had an RFID badge system, and so they printed out a real badge that worked in the vault with my picture, sleeping face on it. Iteration 3 came with this. Someone, my wife, found a picture of me in a pink wig from a long time ago and gave it to someone who had a badge printer who printed this badge. And then iteration 4 came with the tamper evidence challenge, where somehow someone thought it was a really good idea to Photoshop that picture on a Centaur. But it's funny because I would never have thought that this would have developed over just a single badge over the course of 4 years. But why does this even matter? I like to think of this as a metaphor. Many things in our industry are an iterative process. The Wi-Fi cactus is an example of that. The first year, the Wi-Fi cactus was a little box inside of, it was a little, I can't even remember the board that was in it. It was inside of a little Pelican box that had just an antenna. Well, that was only channel hopping. And so Dark Matter said, well, I don't want to just channel hop, I want to capture more interfaces. So let's do multiple cards and assign them to different channels and spread out 14 of them. So the following year he had 14 boxes. And then that wasn't good enough because he was missing packets. And so Hack5 got on the project and said, why don't we just deploy 25 cactuses and sniff all of the channels. And so on year 3, the Wi-Fi cactus was born, and it was full spectrum monitoring of 2.4 and a little bit of 5.8. But that was iteration number 3, right? So the metaphor is everything is an iterative process. Lean's badge, the Wi-Fi cactus, and mentoring is no different. We open up opportunities for these kids, right? So the iteration 1 was they came here, they learned how to lockpick. Iteration 2 was they went back, they built a hackerspace. And you know, we keep building upon that. And then it just snowballs, and it's out of your control at that point. And that's kind of what's happened. But so why do we need mentors? That's kind of the big thing that I think everyone's kind of forgetting is we all need to be mentors. We don't need to just be absorbers, you know, seeders, leechers, if you're doing torrents. You need to be a seeder, okay? Seed more. And here, there's a lot of stats here, so we'll run through them really quick. But the hiring challenges, I face this every day in my organization. 55% indicate that open positions take at least 3 months to fill in the security world. That's very, very common. 32% say 6 months or more. One of the positions I received a few years back, it had taken them over a year to fill. 1 in 5 organizations get fewer than 5 applications. So it's very difficult to get even people to even apply. And then of those, 13% get 20 or more applications. But shift over to the right, 37% say fewer than 1 in 4 are even qualified. So of the 5 applications you get, you may only have 1 that's actually qualified. That's not a very good pool to pull from. If you get more than 20 and 1 in 4 are qualified, that's very difficult to still hire on. So this is a big challenge. Is the education system giving the children the right tools, the right information to qualify for these positions? What are the requirements to qualify for these positions? And you'll see right below, it says 55% say practical hands-on experience is the most important qualification for a cybersecurity candidate. How do you get hands-on quality experience from a 4-year degree right out of college, right? So you need to have, during your college years or shortly thereafter, you have internships, you have mentorships, you have someone that is giving you access to open the door, get your foot in the door, and excel and grow. We do that at our organization. We try and bring someone in as an intern, and we try and grow them. We try and give them the tools they need to become a security professional. And that's ultimately the big challenge that we're trying to fill as mentors. How do we train the next generation to fill these spots? A few years ago, probably 10 years ago, an IT admin would touch the firewall, would touch the server, would touch the phone system, the Wi-Fi system. And so the jack of all trades mentality went away when we started getting specialized individuals. We now have an email server admin. We now have a Wi-Fi admin. These technologies are becoming so complex that you need specialties. The cybersecurity industry has gone that way as well. You don't have a jack of all trades cybersecurity guy. I could tell you right now, I'm not an application pen tester, and I don't ever want to be. I'm a blue teamer. I've dabbled in red teaming, but it takes a lot of effort and energy to be a full-time red teamer or a full-time web app guy or a full-time cloud security architect. That's the next big one, right, that we're seeing. So how do you train the next generation of cybersecurity experts and do that in a specialized way that they can contribute back to the industry? And that's where we've got to figure this out. So where do we start? We all have to become mentors. We all have specialties. We all have skill sets that someone can benefit from. This is the traditional perceived hierarchy in the industry. Okay, you have a mentor, a bunch of mentees. I know when I look up to my mentors, there's always that psychological, oh, they're above me, right? Or you might have one mentor that's mentoring a bunch of people, so now you're concerned that, oh, I don't have the time to spend with them. That's not how it should be. We need to start saying the mentors are mentoring the mentees, but the mentees become the mentors. So what does this look like? You know, how are we going through this cycle where it's not just a tiered hierarchy? How are we teaching each other? And so what happens is you'll oftentimes find someone that is really good at a specific skill set. I have mentors in web application pen testing, right? But I also mentor other people in blue teaming because that's not their skill set. So we need to more crowdsource this mentorship and feed from each other. And that's ultimately what these makerspaces and hackerspaces are. You know, you show up, there's 20 people there, and everyone has a different skill set, and you're learning from each other. And I really value that. Community mentors. And I'm going to go through this list, and I'm going to want people to let me know if I'm missing something here locally, because I want to get it in this slide deck. First and foremost, we're at SAINTCON, so I'm going to put this on here. SAINTCON Utah Saint is a community mentor. We've been mentoring many individuals, high school kids, college kids, business individuals, IT admins, for years. Open West. Open West started as primarily a developers conference and has sprawled into quite the organization. There's so many different tracks there now. That's actually where I first got introduced to CTFs. Devin Four, again, DCAF, said, hey, we're running a CTF at Open West. Do you want to come help build it? Absolutely. We show up, we build this CTF, we don't know what we're doing. And then a bunch of people show up and say, I don't know anything about this, but I want to try it out. So instantly we put on our mentor hat and say, hey, let's just get your feet wet. Open up this bash prompt and type this and do something. And you see that little spark in their eye, like, oh, wow, this is easier than I thought. That's what you're looking for. B-Sides SLC, the whole national, I'm not going to call them a chain, but the organization, B-Sides all over the country now. Hack West is another local conference. DC 801 is a local DEF CON chapter organization. 801 Labs is a local hackerspace. Hack Salt Lake is a local makerspace. UVU Cybersecurity Club has a really good group of individuals. They have a Slack channel, and there's a few of us that are in the industry that are on it, and there's actually a Slack channel that says questions for leaders. So we give them the opportunity to speak amongst themselves and to interact, but when they have questions for someone in the industry, they have a direct line to say, hey, I know you do this pen testing every day. Do you see this? What's common? How do I do this specific thing? And it just gives them that opportunity to ask the questions that they need. H4, someone needs to help me with this. I think this is what it's called, but what I'm referring to is USU has a hackerspace in Logan. Is that called H4? No one from Logan? You are? There's a USU sponsored like hackerspace, makerspace. So there's a free software Linux club. You know what? That's also something I should probably put on here as well. One thing I don't have on here is SLC Linux was one that we had. There's a bunch of user group, Provo user, Linux user group. There's a lot of different user groups here locally that I need to add. But community libraries, I feel that libraries are kind of the forgotten mentor. There are 3D printers in libraries now. And that's a perfect opportunity for high school kids to get their feet wet in 3D printing without having to spend hundreds of dollars, right? So the community libraries are just as important as the rest of these organizations. So let's go back to the Social Geeks kids. Okay, so this was in 2014. Okay, so we saw an earlier picture of 2013. This is in 2014 when they first created the Capture the Flag. Okay, a few years later, they are helping run the CTF at Roots Asylum at DEF CON. Okay, that's a big, big deal. That's huge. So let's play the game again, spot the mentors. Can anybody spot the mentors in this one? Two dudes standing up by the sign? In this case, it's everyone. Everyone. And this is why. DEF CON 2017. The same kids that were here at SAINTCON in 2013 are now teaching these kids in 2017. That's a big, big deal. Okay? So we go from this to this. Okay, that's the snowball effect that mentoring these kids has. Okay, they become the mentors. And the funny thing that happened the first year, I think we had Hardware Hacking Village had these little RC car robot things. And I was like, no one's going to like those. You know, they show up. This may have been in 2014. And a couple of the kids ripped them apart and built them like super fast. Like you wouldn't believe how fast they built them. And I said, how the heck did you guys figure that out? I don't know, we just played with it and figured it out. And I'm looking at them like, I can't even do that right now. So when you think you're a mentor, what ends up happening is they end up mentoring you almost more than you're mentoring them, because I'm learning from these kids more than they're learning from me. All I'm doing them is giving a little sliver of what is possible, and their creativity and imagination just took it to the next level, okay? What is our role as mentors? I think this is critical because oftentimes we find, hey, what can I do? How can I get involved? How do I be a mentor? Is it an official thing that I need to sign a mentorship agreement and I need to mentor someone for 6 months? It's not. And I think that's the common misconception. Introduce new and exciting technologies. Simple as that. Ask questions. Ask them questions about those technologies because you don't know. The robots, hey guys, how does this work? Because I don't know how it works. Oh, well, this servo motor does this, and we can calibrate it this way, and we can control it with this Raspberry Pi. Sweet, had no idea. So by asking questions, you're encouraging them to find the answers so that when they go find the answers, they can just report back to you and teach you. Yeah? And if you've ever done presentations in school or like conferences, you often find that you learn more by teaching and presenting about the technology. So if you can convince whoever you're mentoring to teach you, they're going to learn more. Build interest. Show them what's out there and show them what is exciting and build interest to their specific skill sets. Maybe someone likes lockpicking. Maybe someone likes JavaScript or CSS. Get them involved in what they're interested in, because what you're interested in, you're more likely to dedicate a lot of time to and put a lot of energy into it and ultimately be more successful. Contribute. Get involved. Get involved with them. Don't just ship over an idea and let it just fizzle out. Find out why they want to do it. What do they need to get it done? There's a talk tomorrow morning from Corbin Villa on Bluetooth that I highly recommend everyone go see, because he and I have been talking about Bluetooth packet capturing at DEF CON and how does he do it and what tools does he use to get it done. And I wanted to get more involved in the project because he also had a spin-off project for trying to track down Bluetooth skimmers at gas stations. Get involved, ask the questions, find out what technologies they're using. Can you inject ideas? Hey, what if we did it this way? Or hey, what if we went and looked for this information? Could you get more out of it? So definitely get involved. A couple things to avoid. Don't steer their interests just because it's your interest. That's the fastest way to get disconnected. That's the fastest way to go down a rabbit hole. Allow them to steer those conversations. Allow them to steer the interest, because what you'll find is you're kind of predisposed to, hey, this style of thinking, I know that I do X, Y, Z in this an iterative format, and I know it's going to yield these results, so I want to steer them into that framework of, we do this, we're going to get this result, and I want to teach them this. Let it be dynamic. Let it be fluid. What you'll find is they're going to come up with ideas that you never thought of because you're not steering the conversation. But answer all the questions. Don't answer all the questions. Because if you're answering all of the questions, then you're not letting them go find the answers themselves. If someone says, how do I do this? I don't know. Go Google it. Go learn. Go figure it out. Go play with it. Hey, go tweak that knob and see what it does. Don't just answer the question. And doing the work for them. I oftentimes relate this to the Pinewood Derby car racing, right? So the dads really want to win. They want their kid to feel the excitement of winning, so they build the car for them. What did the kid learn, right? Let them do the work themselves. They will learn more with hands-on experience. Things to focus on, okay? Give a man a fish, and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for a lifetime, okay? Teach them how to find the solutions themselves. That's probably the biggest takeaway. If we don't let them learn, if we don't teach them how to learn, then they're not going to go out and learn this on themselves or learn things on their own. So with that, I just say, let's get mentoring. And I have to apologize that this is a short talk. I wanted time for Q&A, and I also had to take out half the slides because most of them were around decaf. As many of you may know, decaf committed suicide earlier this year, and so he was an instrumental part of this organization and this community and mentoring everyone around him. And so last night at 1 a.m. when I was reviewing my slides, I had to rip a lot of that out. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got through this talk. So with that said, thanks for coming out, and is there any questions? Are there any comments? Yes? Yes, actually, I should add that to the slide deck. I'm gonna repeat that for the recording. Garrett Wright said, celebrate your failures, encourage failures. That's a great point. At the Hackerspace, we're always bumping into what we do, failures, and we learn more by our failures, right? The whole Thomas Edison didn't need to figure out the 1,000 ways to build a light bulb. He failed 1,000 times, but he only had to figure out how to build it once or something like that. It's a horrible analogy, but we learn more through our failures. Even every day at work, every time I build something and I run into a wall, it's an iterative process. What did I fail at? What do I need to tweak or change? How do I learn from it? So thanks, Garrett. Any other comments? Okay, well, thank you for coming out.